Now, the first thing we're going to look at in terms of enumeration is how to enumerate a Windows box. And one of the things about Windows is there are some things you can get remotely, but a lot of things you have to get locally. So one of the things about enumeration is sometimes you can enumerate more if you actually have physical access to the box or if you have some kind of credentials. Now, obviously, in the hacking stages, we may not have that physical access and we may not have those credentials. So some of this information you're going to have to get remotely. Some versions of Windows, including older like Windows 2000 and even Windows XP, will give up more information remotely than, say, Windows 7 or Windows 8. As a matter of fact, Windows 7 and Windows 8 come a little bit more secure out of the box on a fresh install, so you're likely not going to get much information off of them unless the user has configured them in a non-secure manner. So when you start to do Windows enumeration, you're probably going to be targeting older Windows versions, and a lot of these tools that we see out there with Windows are a little bit older. We're going to do a couple of demonstrations of tools on a Windows XP box just to show you what I'm talking about. And keep in mind that some of these tools are designed to be run natively on Windows. In other words, they're native commands and utilities, and some of them are free downloads or whatever, tools that you could use externally. And in some cases, for the remote tools to work, you need to know the IP address or the NetBIOS name, the computer name, if you will, and use the UNC naming convention to try to connect to the computer. Now, what are we looking for on a Windows enumeration? Well, we're looking for the standard ports and protocols and services that are open, but we're hoping to get information about those ports, protocols, and services. The typical Windows ports, for example, are 135, 137, 139, 445. Those are the TCP ports that are usually open on a Windows box, starting around with Windows 2000 and up. And in fact, if you see other ports on a Windows box like port 389 or 3368, those are ports involved with Active Directory. So in those cases, you know that you actually have a domain that you're working with, and if you see a box listening on those ports, that could be an Active Directory domain controller or something like the infrastructure master or some other master role in Active Directory. 389 is the LDAP, which indicates Active Directory, and 3368 is the Global Catalog Services. Again, both of those could run on a domain controller. So you're looking for Active Directory domain information. You're also looking from a Windows perspective NetBIOS names and information. You're looking for possible Windows usernames and maybe even default passwords. Keep in mind that on a Windows box, normally the guest account does not have a password. It's not set, so the default is that it's blank. However, the guest account could be disabled, and on later Windows versions it is, but in earlier versions it was not automatically disabled. You're looking also for shares that are open. C dollar share, admin dollar, IPC dollar, and so forth, to see who can access those shares. You might be looking for permissions or privileges to get to those shares or to run certain commands. So we're looking for as much information as we can get on a Windows box to help us figure out attack vectors, to give us a little bit more of a way into a Windows system. So let's go ahead and look at a couple of tools over the next two sessions. A couple of these are native tools that come with Windows, things like NBT Stat. And some other tools are really cool tools you can download to run against Windows, either locally or remotely, depending upon what kind of privilege level you have and what access you have to the box. And in some cases, these can be run from a physical perspective, actually being on the keyboard physically if you have the opportunity to. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of these tools. Okay, we're in our XP box, and a couple of command line tools that I want to show you are the NBT Stat command. And you can use that with the -A, for example, and give the full IP address of the box, 192.168.163.142. And this would give you the machine names, any NetBIOS names that are sitting out there on the box. Now, obviously, this box is a member of a work group, and the work group name is VTC, and the name of the box is VTC-XP-1, so we're getting some names off of there. We know that it's not part of a domain. It tells us who the master browser is, if there is one. We also get information on the fact that this computer actually has two IP addresses, meaning that it has two active NICs. So that might be information that would be useful to us. In some cases, if you see this, it might indicate that the box is connected to two different networks. So that might be a good box to hop to another network from the one you're on. In this case, though, both of them are assigned to the same network. So we're looking at the NetBIOS names here, and another command you can run natively is the net command. And if you just type in net, you're going to see that there are all kinds of different commands that you can get some information off of Windows with. You have the net use command, which shows shares. You have the net session command, which shows any connected sessions. You also have net accounts. And if you run some of these commands, you'll see a little bit of information that's very useful to know. Like, this is the policy on this box. It's very useful to get to know the net commands for a Windows box and to know how NBTstat works, for example, because you can enumerate a lot of information using these net commands. So this would give you the account policy for the particular local box. Since it's not on a domain, the account policy is local to the box itself. So this would tell us that, what the password aging requirements are. The minimum password length is 0. So this box is actually insecure in terms of password policy and account policies. So those are two commands that you should be familiar with when running against any version of Windows. And in the next session, I'll show you some of the other tools you can download that don't come natively with Windows that we can use to enumerate it.